Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us on Upfront in the Prophetic. We're so blessed that you are here. If this is your first time, go ahead and subscribe, like, and share this message. The only way that we can set people free from the bondages of corporate America is to get these messages out so that the truth will really bring them to a place of being free. Amen. Amen. Before we have Larry Ballard on, just wanted to share a couple words with you all. I hope you are having a great day. Today is Friday, the 2nd of February. Wow, can you believe it? I mean, time is flying by. Another thing I wanted to share with you is in regards to taking the border back. We have several of our friends that are part of this tour. It's takeourborderback.com. If you head on over to the site, you'll be able to see what they're doing, how they need help. If you want a place to sow into them. A lot of these guys traveled across America to get to Eagle Pass, as well as Tucson, Arizona, and San Diego at the border to pray, as well as to just bring peace in that area. Again, takeourborderback.com. Also, I wanted to share Coriolis Versicola Upfront Period Pet Club 247.com. So many phenomenal testimonies. Don't let the name fool you guys, okay? Because I am telling you what, the product works not only on your pets, okay? Dogs, cats, horses, cows, whatever, but on you and I, and it is phenomenal. Actually, I'm drinking some right now, if you could tell. Yep, I actually opened up the capsule and put it all in there. Because having capsules I don't really care for. But anyway, hey, last one, Cardio Miracle. That's right, over 53 ingredients, great boosting nitric oxide. It also comes in a big container too. And if you go to cardiomiracle.com, you'll be able to get a 20% discount. Okay, so without further ado, let's get Larry Ballard on the screen. How you doing?
Actually, I'm doing pretty fantastic.
I love how Dave over at His Glory is starting to get you on and asked you back. So that's really huge. I'm excited about that. And then just to see how God is moving this. Because people really do need to know what is going on. So praise God for that. And then if you wouldn't mind, Larry, just putting the screen down just a little bit lower here so I can make sure that I have your whole face. There you
Is
go.
that better?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's
Okay,
perfect.
great.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, we're going to talk about um God is the waymaker. Amen. And
That's
freedom
right.
is at hand. I love that. And it is at hand. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in regards to Eagle Pass, and we have a team out there, which Robert and
Mhm.
Jamie AG that are at the border with a bunch of people. Craig Hutchinson with his big old RV, and they're praying there, and they're just really ministering to a lot of people. So it's exciting times, isn't it?
Yep, and there's more to that event that I think people understand. There comes a time when a people have to literally do what our president's threatened to do. We have to draw a line in the sand and say enough is enough. And what this is indicating is there are people who are ready to stand up. Governor Abbott is ready to stand up, and governors from several states are supporting him. And who are they supporting them against? Against the corrupt government that's taken over this nation. And they're saying enough is enough is enough. And here's what I just want to say one thing on that, and then we'll get into today. I believe that if you realize what precipitated this trip to the border, that the elite have done something that has given them away to a substantial degree. There's a bill in Congress that basically says we can shut this border down. We can make the illegal immigrants stay in Mexico or return them to Mexico. And all we ask is you let us have 5,000 a day. That's a 1.3 million. So if they can't stop it after 5,000 a day, they can stop it on the first person. So they've basically given their hand away and told us we could stop this anytime we want. So now maybe we'll come on later, aside from this 12 shows we're doing, and we can dig into what you really need to understand the border. You have to start all the way back in with the 12 tribes and follow the path of the lost tribes, follow them up through Europe, follow them to the United States, jump over to China and see what happened over there that relates to our border, jump over to Europe and see what happened over there, and jump over to the Arab Spring. And when you do, it unmasks everything that they're doing with this border. So this is important. This is crucial. But to really, really understand it, you need that history. So maybe we can do a show on that at some later date. But right now, let's get into the one for the day.
Okay.
So, you people who've been following, I'm throwing you another curve. God, I just love this one saying from my best friend. He says, "If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plan."
Yes.
So I planned on 12 shows, and we're not doing one of those shows today. God interrupted and said, "Nope, I'm giving you some new information." So I know it's the last time or the time before we did a little introduction at the beginning that was new material, but now God said, "Nope, you didn't do justice to that because I've got new material to add to it." So this is truly going to be about three things. It's going to show you that God is really in covenant with America. We are the nation that God is going to use to restore peace and prosperity to the world. And then we're going to get into how exactly is that going to happen? And how are we're going to start to get into the story of how we restore our republic. So I think this is going to be a very important and very crucial insert into this 12-part series, which is now 13 parts. So Francine, shall we get on to the slides?
All right, let's go. So again, like I said, God is a way maker. Freedom is at hand. And of course, if you haven't received the book yet, please go ahead to larryballard.com and receive the book, or you could just scan the Q code there and order your book from there. It's just amazing because you never know who you're going to meet that really needs to know the truth to make them free. And this would be a great way to introduce them to what's been really going on.
I can insert the thing that I think this book does that others don't do is because God had me study history. He studied the Bible and a whole bunch of other things and live all over the world at strategically important times. It's difficult to take what's in this book and call it conspiracy theory. So it really lays a foundation for you so that if you are going to talk to people, they're not going to cut up what you say and call you conspiracy theorist and a nuthead. You're going to be able to stand there and defend what it is that you're saying. So let's get into what we're going to talk about today.
All right.
Before we go to the next slide, we've seen this before, but this is part of the new information that God gave me. He gave me an unction. He says, you need to highlight this. He says, if we're going to talk about why America is God's covenant nation, this is a very important part. So I just brought this back up because what I want to do is take you to the next slide, and I want to focus on an assignment that I have for you. So at a high level, as we said, this was about the Bible, about liberty, morality, education, and law. But this is where you need to go. This is your first assignment. There'll be two assignments here today. If you really want to get informed and be able to be empowered to join the army of God, this man, Kirk Cameron, did a phenomenal job. He traveled all over the world. He went to Europe, and he basically dug in to the history of America. So that top line says, it is time we rediscover our heritage, our pride, and our patriotism. They've taken that away from us. So if you'll watch this, it's about an hour and a half long. I found it recently on the internet. I don't know if it's still there. That was a few weeks ago, but I encourage everyone to go watch this documentary. It is a very concise way to get an understanding of who America is and of the pride and patriotism that we should have towards this country. Let's move on.
All right.
So the first part of this is kind of a little bit of a repeat. I always have repeats. I want people to understand and to believe absolutely in the fiber of their soul. America has a destiny. It has always had a destiny. We are in covenant with God. So basically, this simple little quote from Genesis, and I will make of thee a great nation. Nobody can argue that America is a great nation, maybe arguably the greatest nation in the history of the world. And I will bless thee. And we have been blessed. The standard of living in America is absolutely astounding compared to most other countries. And make thy name great, and they shall be a blessing. So America has been a blessing to other nations. But here's what happened. This is what we're going to get into in today. We were usurped. And what happened is there's all these wars that we've been in have all been nefarious with nefarious purposes. They decided a long time ago that if they didn't intercede in the affairs of America and break it up so that it was at least two nations, that it would be so powerful that it would cause the collapse of all the aristocracies in Europe. So they interfered in America. Think about America and how unique it is. How many countries are there in Europe? I think there's 28 nations now that are in the EU, and other continents of the world, they don't have one single government. They have multiple governments. And so America is the only nation in the world preordained by God to be one united, powerful block of united people with enough economic clout to be able to be the leader of the world and with enough of a moral fiber to direct the world in the direction it needed to go. So, three things that start to lay the groundwork for believing that we are in covenant with God is the first time that anybody from Europe stepped here representing this country was 1607 at the first landing. And the first thing they did, just think about this, they cut the mast off of their ship and made a cross. And they dedicated this country to God and said, we will evangelize to this nation and to the world. And it will not only be this generation, but all the generations that follow. So God basically saw to it that from the inception, we were unique. We were dedicating ourselves to God from the beginning. And then the one that people know about is the Mayflower at 1620. And before those pilgrims even got off the ship, they had written the Mayflower Compact and signed it. And so we were once again dedicated to America. And remember, they didn't come over as a trading company like the 1607 event. They came over seeking religious freedom. And in their minds, here's the history of what they were doing. They saw that voyage across the ocean as the Red Sea. They saw this as the promised land. And originally, they were even going to have Hebrew as their language. So these people's roots went all the way back to the foundation, back into the cradle of civilization. And God was laying the groundwork because God is a God who knows the end before the beginning. He's a way maker, and he was making a way for the nation that was going to lead the world to where he needed them to be. And then in 1789, people don't think of this being the date, they think of 1776. That was when the Declaration of Independence was signed. But in 1889 is when we became a consecrated nation. And the first thing that Washington did was make a 3-hour speech dedicating America to God. There's no other nation in the world that can say what I just said here on this slide. Francine, before we go on, do you want to make any comments?
You know what? I had the actually, Alan and I had the wonderful opportunity to go to Virginia Beach for the first landing, not of 1607, of course, but last year. Jack Stagman and oh my gosh, Craig Hutchins and a team, including Robert Agee as well, put on this whole event in remembrance of what took place, and it was really, really powerful. So amazing, you know, how they all prayed at the cross because there was a cross there, where they all met, and they did that again. And boy, you could just feel that there was a break in the spirit when everyone got together again to pray at that cross. And you know, soon after, a lot of things were being exposed, Larry. You know, so God is our healer, not only of our body but of our nation, and we will see victory Maybe not tomorrow, but it's right around the corner.
It's very close. And you probably know this, but do you know where they started this caravan from?
I believe Virginia, correct? Or
From
was
the
it?
site of the 1607 landing.
Yeah.
That's where they began.
Wow.
So history is repeating itself. We're going back to our roots and our foundation. So the first assignment was to watch Monumental. We're going to get to the second assignment when we get to the end of this, and it has to do what Francine just brought up. So let's go to the next slide. So I just want to punctuate something here. We're trying to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, America was from inception, before the foundation of time, chosen to fulfill a unique purpose for God. And so over to that left under the picture of Christ with the Lamb, he's basically saying that there's other sheep in his sheep pen, and they will know his voice. Well, that's us. We're the lost tribes. And why did God have lost tribes in the first place? You have to go back to the cradle of civilization, and you have to understand that in the Middle East and in Europe and in Asia, they had been fighting wars for centuries. They had all kinds of ethnic differences. There were all kinds of different political opinions, and people were very, very unhappy. There wasn't a free society within any of those nations. And so God said, I'm going to take a people out of all that melee, and I'm going to give them a land where they can come together with a united purpose. So everybody who came to America, God chose America to be the land where he brought his lost tribes from. They were to go out to experience what they had to experience and then come back, and they all came seeking freedom, whether it was in 1607, 1620, or whenever it was. This is a nation of people that wanted to worship God and wanted freedom. We all had a purpose. And so that graphic over to the left, it says that God knew from the beginning we were a melting pot, and he knew that he was going to bring us together and take away all of our differences and create a unique group of people that were united, because he knows in his word that it says a nation divided cannot stand. So we came together in unity, and before we finish, we're going to show the world how to have peace and harmony in this earth. We are the nation that is going to bring peace to the world. Let's go on. So I'm going to read this next one, or at least try to. My eyes are giving me some trouble today. So this is something I wrote. It's not a quote from somebody, to describe what that melting pot is. I'm going to read it on my computer because it's cut off on this one. So it says, America is God's promised land. And I believe that was before the foundation of time, where people of all races, all creeds, and all nationalities had an opportunity to participate in a grand experiment. What was that experiment? There had never been a nation that was of the people, by the people, for the people. All of the nations that existed before that were in varying degrees tyrannical nations. So we had a chance to participate in the formation of the world's first republic, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. The forming of a nation where people had the opportunity to put aside old customs, beliefs, and hatreds, and stand united as one people, dedicated to God and to the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. So what did they believe? That we all had inalienable rights, that we had rights just like those kings and rulers of Europe thought they had, but denied us. So we came here to get what God had promised us and what was in our hearts and what was in the Bible that we were reading. So to be the promised land where men were free, where men could learn to live in peace and harmony. That is what is going to come out of the birth of America. And we're going to birth it again a second time in a very, very short order. And that has to do with your second assignment. So let's move on. And this is a quote that I want to read from Daniel. And this lays the foundation for what God had planned from the beginning and where we're soon going to go. In the time of those kings, what kings? Well, we talked about them before. There's 5 governmental systems, and we're going to talk about them briefly again in a little different fashion than we did last time. So in the time of those kings, the God of heaven, the one and only God, will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. That's his kingdom on earth, because the other kingdoms are going to fall, nor will it be left to other people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it itself will endure forever. So that's what we're going to see. God has had mankind out learning hard sought lessons that they needed to learn so that he could bring us together and bring us to our knees and bring us to a point where we are finally ready to submit to God and learn to live in peace and harmony. So with that, let's look at how this is going to happen. So these are those 5 governmental systems. And I've got the names over to the left, but we talked about it last time. So that those were here, I'm not going to try to bore you. Monarchy, oligarchy, authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and democracy, they all share something. So let me just ask you a question. Now, maybe there are those out there who say, well, America's not so bad. I wouldn't mind. I like living here. But if you really understood how much of our freedom we lost, you wouldn't say that. We're basically as much of a totalitarian government as any of these others. So would you want to live in England? Would you want to live in Russia and China and Iran? Would you want to live under what are effectively communist dictatorships? I don't think so. But America is not much better. Let's go on to the next slide and we'll see what it is, why it is that those governmental systems, including America, have to collapse. So, in varying degrees, they all exhibit abuse of power, hoarding of resources, and division, which invariably leads to rivalry, oppression, war, economic and social instability, and eventually social collapse. And I would add moral collapse. Isn't that where we are today? So, Francine, let me stop here and let you make some comments. I'm sure you have some things that the audience would want to hear on this as far as where society is today. Are we really God's children, or have we been, kind of taken over a little bit?
Yeah, I believe that we've definitely been taken over. Look at our education system. I mean, a bunch of lies, unfortunately. And not to mention, back in the day, the government asked the church to basically take care of its people, but the church uh, actually denied and said, no, that's okay, you can. That's where we get, the welfare system and all that. So the church has been lazy. I believe a lot of this derives from the church not standing up and teaching its people the truth of the gospel and the kingdom of God. Because a lot of times we of course, salvation is a key, but after salvation you need to learn about the kingdom of God and the authority that God has given us. And that has not been taught in many circles, which is a shame. So what happens when, the church has laid down, then the government arises to that totalitarian position. And so I believe now we are looking at the situation to where the eyes of the people, we the people, are opening up, just as we're seeing here in Texas. I know that Texas is have basically just put their flag, hung their flag, reading "Come and take it." So they're standing up to what is really going on right now. And another thing that I want to kind of sidetrack on, but not really, in Colorado, there's a lot of stuff going on in regards to Tina Peters. And Tina Peters was one that basically reported on what was really going on. She exposed a lot of things here. And we need to just remember the name Tina Peters, as they plan to take her to court on the 8th of February and bring her right to jail because of what she did. But what she did was, I believe, what we needed to see. And so, this is what happens but see, the government is fighting now against we the people because we're finding out exactly what they've been doing for decades.
Do you want to briefly tell the people a little bit about what she did?
Yeah, actually, I'll read this because let me go to the article. I was just sent this article, perfect timing, and it says, Francine, will you consider sharing the information below? And honestly, I'd like to interview her because of what is going on. It says, on February 8th, jury selection impaneled and possibly opening arguments February 9th through the 21st. And this is Tina talking. She says, if I'm convicted, they will escort me from the courtroom into jail custody straight away. This should be national, but see, it's not. They're not bringing this to any attention. If we don't expose what we found here during this opportunity to have a huge crowd here, this will get buried because the prosecution is not letting me say one thing about the real reason that they want to put me in prison. We need huge crowds in the courtroom and with signs outside. Our border is saturated with fentanyl, trafficking, and selected criminals running our country. And it will not stop unless we stop these machines from cheating and getting the information out to the people. Everything that I've done, everything that I've risked to expose, this is coming down to the next week and the week after. And so she's calling the patriots to arise, to show up, at the courtroom, to stand for her. And let me see. Okay, so basically, she exposed massive corruption in Colorado. Between this, what they did to Diana Watt, the 600 million unaccounted for in the Colorado open checkbook where they have no names on entries for, and the BVSD satanic ritual of a student and subsequent grilling of the filmer. So if you haven't heard that there was at a school in Colorado, not sure exactly where, but there was these kids, I believe they were middle school, and they were surrounding this one girl and they were chanting, Satan take her. I mean, it was so demonic. So Tina Peters is exposing all this stuff that's going on in Colorado, and of course they don't like it because their pants are down, and so yeah, we've got to stand up for people like her, so even if we write letters, or if you're in Colorado, I know a lot of Coloradians, if you say that correctly, are listening. Please support her. Go to the courthouse. And it doesn't say what courthouse, but perhaps it's probably like Denver. No, it's Grand Junction. Grand Junction. So guys, we need to support her. So that's basically what she did. She exposed everything in regards to election fraud, and oh my gosh, they are up in their hairs are ruffled. I mean, tremendously right now. Not to mention their pants being down, so that's pretty embarrassing.
And there's two topics that you can get in trouble for. One is talking about the truth of COVID, and the other is the truth of the theft of the election. So, yeah,
Yeah.
and one other thing, and I know you have this on your mind, you just maybe didn't say it. There's power in prayer. So all those prayer warriors out there, get together on your prayer chains and call people and pray for this lady, and let's see if we can't bring some divine intervention in here.
Amen. Amen, brother. Yeah, because prayer changes things, and all things are possible through Christ Jesus our Lord.
Yep.
So we've got to do this. We've got to stick together. We've got to stick together. So let's head on over to the next slide.
All right, I'm ready. So basically, we had this one up before too, but I'm going to give a little bit of a different twist on it. I want to come back and keep saying we are God's covenant nation. God planned everything. So I had this kind of insight this morning. I got up out of bed thinking about this slide, and I want you to follow along with me on a little mental trip I'm going to go on. So I get up today and I'm going to go into work, and I'm going to plan on whatever. I used to be a salesman on how to sell something to somebody. And I only took jobs selling things that I thought benefited other people. So for most of my career, I sold medical equipment. I sold radiation therapy equipment that helped people with their health. And then later kidney dialysis equipment. And then I went into real estate, and I had a unique perspective. I had worked in construction. I had owned several properties that I rehabbed myself. I was a landlord, and I basically used my position as a realtor to educate people and to help people. But now I want you to think about what happens when somebody from Davos or somebody from the one world government gets up in the morning and they go into a meeting, and instead of thinking about what do I do today to help someone, they think about, let's go back to say it's the time just before World War One. Well, we want to maintain power. We want to keep control of the global supply chain in the hands of England and the European aristocracy. So, how are we going to do that? Well, we can start a war. Well, let's lay out what that war would look like. And oh, it might kill 15, 20 million people, but that's okay. That's fine as long as we get what we want. So that is what we're up against. And this slide is going to show you that on any given day, they get up and say, this is what we're going to do. And there are 4 points in time in which they said, we have to shift the power in order to get what we want. So they started out that all the power was coming from Europe, from those aristocracies that eventually fell and morphed. They took all the wealth of the world that they had gathered, and they created the global banking system. And they, in the process of pillaging the world, had gotten control of about 75% of the world. And then what happened is, remember, we said before, America was unique. Instead of being a collection of different nations, different ethnicities, it was one united nation. And so they decided we need to tap in to what America has. And what we need to do is give them some power so that they can protect our holdings, so they can protect our land. And anytime anybody comes against our global financial system, we'll unleash the American military to start a war, or we'll unleash the American financial system to put sanctions on people. So they ceded power, at least on the surface, to America so that they could have that layer of protection. So we became what? The world's police force. But we weren't serving God. We were serving the global financial elite because we had by then been taken over, and we were being controlled by a shadow government, not by the government that the people elected. And then what happened? They reached another point in Civil War. They said they had to break America up because it was too powerful. Well, that it did happen because that is what resulted in the Act of 1871 that gave the venture capitalists from Europe control over us. But now we move into the Carter era, and they said, well, we got to take this a little bit further. We've got to give power to China, take it away from the United States, because we want the innovation of America, but we want the absolute control of a communist government. And that's the third shift. They were on all 180-degree shifts. And now this is the one you need to get your head around, folks.
Mm.
Now they've decided that this is time for the kill shot. And here's what they want to do. They want to collapse the entire economic system. They want to collapse China. They want to collapse the United States. And if both of those collapse, that means the entire global financial system is going to change. Now, here's the new stuff. This is why I put this in here. I want to take it a step further. I want you to think. I want you to put your thinking cameras on and follow me along. What happens this time when we have our collapse that's different than before? All the other collapse were about them getting more money, getting more power. And what they would do is take us down to where we had a collapse, but it was controlled. It was always at a point where they could basically bring it back anytime they wanted. And what they would do is buy back whatever it is that if the stocks went down, they'd buy them back at 10 cents on the dollar. But the bill for what they had done was always passed on to the public. So basically, we weren't in such bad debt that we couldn't handle it. We absorbed that debt. The American people absorbed the debt. So in '08, we got the pleasure of bailing the banker gangsters out who had caused that collapse. We got a chance to pay $700 billion to bail them out. Here's what's different, folks. You need to get your head around this. As a result of COVID, every nation in the world is maxed out its debt limit. They're up to their noses in debt, and they basically are on the brink of financial collapse. So when they bring this down, almost every nation in the world now has a debt that is greater than their GDP. That's unheard of. So that means there's no cushion for them to come in and say, America, bail us out. France, bail us out. No, it's going to cause a catastrophically different type of collapse. That's what I want you to walk away with from this slide. There's not going to be a comeback from this. This is the kill shot. This is where either we win or they win, but we are going to win. So let's go on, and I'm going to show you God has it all planned. So there are those out there who are trying to take things back by going into the court system. And I want you to think, I'm going to show you or tell you about a second Declaration of Independence. And it takes you on a different journey. It says, just like I've been saying, folks, you cannot go into the enemy's camp and fight them on their ground and win. Those courts have been taken over long ago. The politicians have been taken over. We're not going to go in and win that battle right now. There's a time for that, but that's not the way. If you look back in history, that's not the way God works. When he works, when he puts his hand out and says, enough, it's time for judgment, nations fall in a day. Goliath fell in a moment. Nebuchadnezzar saw handwriting on the wall and he lost his kingdom immediately. So what's going to happen here is we're going to reach a point where those whistleblowers, like you, Francine, were talking about, are going to come out in droves. The financial collapse is going to happen. There's going to be no residual money left to bail out the system. And in one full day, we might lead up over several weeks with seeing it coming, but an event is going to happen where we go to bed one night and wake up the next morning and the world is different. The collapse will have happened. And that's the way God always does it. God intercedes, and when he intercedes, it's not like with man, it's going to be that fast. So I just want to show you that's what's happening. Now let's go to the next slide, and we'll talk about how the Great Reset is going to happen. And it relates to the story that you told a minute ago. Basically, the global financial collapse will happen catastrophically in an unrecoverable fashion, literally overnight. And when that happens, I want you to think about what God's just done. Their greatest strength was their money. They had it 24 hours before, and they could blackmail people. They could have black ops operations to have people killed. They could do whatever they wanted to do. They could buy power and influence in every strata of society. But all of a sudden, the day after the collapse, they don't have that money. They've lost their power and control, and a whole army of people who are being blackmailed, who are being suppressed to come out. And we're going to have whistleblowers, the likes of which we've never seen. The one that you talked about in Colorado will just be one of dozens and dozens and dozens. And when the people finally realize the magnitude of what's been done to them, we're going to stand up. And we're going to stand up in mass, and we're going to say we refuse to participate in our own slavery. And when that happens, because of the magnitude of this collapse, I want you to think, we lost our freedom because of a bankruptcy. Well, what's going to happen is there's not hardly a major nation in the world that isn't on the brink of bankruptcy right now as we make this video. So we're going to see something we've never seen. We're going to see literally probably dozens of nations change hands. They're going to literally have bankruptcy when this comes down. And that's the opportunity that God wants to create. He wants to take those governments out. And just like when you drive a demon out of someone, you have to come back and sweep the house clean, or he'll bring back 7 of his friends. And so this has to be a total, complete, catastrophic financial collapse. Governments around the world are going to collapse. And when we truly find out what the medical arena has done to us, what the politicians have done, what has been done to us, the people are going to stand up, and corporations, major corporations around the world are going to fall, just like the governments. We're going to get the opportunity to clean house. we're going to wake up one day and say, oh my God, over it might be a few weeks, but it's going to start in one day. Governments will topple, topple, topple. Corporations will topple, topple, topple. And what's going to happen? And let's go back to our legal system. If you get caught racketeering, what did the government provide that you could do? Our Constitution, it says that was illegal, illicitly gained finances, and we can confiscate it. And so what I think we're going to find is that the guys that we call the white hats have been out for the last since 2019, 2020, basically going into corporations, going into countries and saying, we know what you've done. You're gonna be our puppet now. And by the way, we're confiscating your assets. And that leads us to a position where a promise from the Bible can happen, as unlikely as it is, and as much as people don't think. The wealth of the wicked has been stored up for the righteous. And
Amen.
here's what's going to happen. One day they had control. One day they bought all the spheres of influence. And all of a sudden, we're going to have the money. We're going to have God's economic system, and we're going to take over the spheres of influence. And then America will lead the world into an unparalleled opportunity where we'll have peace and prosperity, the likes of which we've never seen. So, America is the nation that's going to lead the world back from this abyss. And we were chosen to do that before the foundation of time. And it's based upon, if you look down at the bottom, upon the American economic system. Now, I'm not going to do a dedicated show to that, but before we're done, I'm going to show you a slide that contains a lot of the components of it. And I want you to think, this is what they did. This is what needs to be done. And if that's done, will it not result in peace and prosperity? And I assure you that it will. So it's not me coming up with a plan. It's me just understanding what God's already done for us. You want to make any comments before we go on?
Well, what I think is so biblical is when President Trump came out with that executive order, and forgive me, I'm not sure if it's 13813 or 13780, in regards to freezing all the assets of those that were, trafficking, those that interfered with the election, and all that. And to me, that's pretty much biblical too. It goes along with,
Yep.
the wealth of the wicked, to where God is utilizing Trump, just like he uses all of us for his purpose and his agenda, to, freeze up those funds to release unto the people. To me, that's
Yep.
powerful.
It is. So let's tie into that and go to this next slide. And I want to give you a little history lesson. Seems like I always am giving history lessons. So how did we get under the control of that corporation? Let me go back and lay some foundation for you. America was becoming very, very powerful. We were we were the innovators of the Industrial Revolution. We were developing the transcontinental railroad system, and there was some division within America because the North was industrializing and they wanted to get out from under control of the British free trade system that enslaves nations by selling goods cheaper than anybody else can produce them. But the industrial South, I mean, the unindustrial South, the agricultural South, still needed to be under that system where they can buy those cheap goods from Britain. So what happened is they sent spies into this country and they agitated the void between the North and the South, and basically the European monarchies led by England precipitated and agitated what became the Civil War. And I want you to think, we come out of these wars and it looks like we won, but we really didn't. We just made a negotiated settlement. So I want to take you back in history and let's go back to the Revolutionary War. Well, we came out of it having declared our independence, but before Washington was even out of office, we were bankrupt and we were under a central bank. And then in, I guess it was 20 years later, War of 1812, Congress had said, we're not going to renew a charter for our second central bank. And England said, well, then we're going to take you back to colonial status. And we had the War of 1812, also called the Second Revolutionary War. It looked like we won. We were still a nation. We weren't at colonial status, but we were back under the central bank again. And then we go to 1913 and we're back under the central bank again. And so basically what happened here in the Civil War, they were trying to divide this nation, and we weren't divided. We came out the North and won, and it looked like again we won, but we didn't, because here's what happened. We were bankrupt, and we were forced to go to the European venture capitalist who loaned us an unlimited amount of money, but they got control of our nation, and that is what led them to be able to do the Act of 1871, where they effectively nullified our Constitution. And the Second Declaration of Independence is giving notice to that corporation that we are declaring not our independence from England, but our independence from the corporation. And so here's your second assignment, and there'll be more to it when we get to the end of this. On July 4th, 2020, Trump signed a second Declaration of Independence, and he cites in there all of the things that the corporation has done to us that precipitate, now listen to this, a complete and fresh start. We have to get out from under our Constitution, out from under the corporation, out from under all the people that they have embedded in our government to create the shadow government that controls us. We cannot do that a little at a time, law by law, through the courts. It must be done in one fell swoop, where we declare a new Declaration of Independence. So that's what gave the urgency to doing this particular video today, so that we understand how this is going to come down and how we're going to get our freedom back. So if you got any comments to make them. And if not, we'll try to run through trying to describe how that process is going to unfold.
Yeah, real quick, Larry, do you remember the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington? It was,
I sure do.
yeah, that was back in 1930 something, with James.
James Stewart, I think it was.
Yeah, yeah, it was, and it was a phenomenal movie, and I would recommend people to watch that movie too. I mean,
Yep.
here he is, James Stewart, running for, I think, Congress or something, and it was just crazy to see, and that's exactly what's been going on with the,
Well, let's recap it.
yeah,
He was a Boy Scout leader,
yeah, there
and
you
there was a death or something that had happened, and they needed somebody to throw in, and said, "Oh, he's squeaky clean. We'll bring him in." And he got in there, and the problem they had was he really was squeaky clean, and he came up against the machine, and
go.
then the machine decided they had to destroy him. And it's a very, very powerful story of the shadow government versus we the people. So yes, that would be something else that I'd recommend. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah, powerful. Here we go.
All right, so remember now, we're talking about how we can't go into the court system and do this a little at a time. So our forefathers, they really understood what was going on. They had lived under slavery, and they knew the power of these people, and they knew they'd come back at them and come back at them and come back at them. So they made some provisions. They made a provision in the Declaration of Independence that said that if we find this government becomes tyrannical, we have the right to form a new government that will give us life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what's happening with this second Declaration of Independence. But they also did something else. They also had the foresight to know that we might one day have what? A shadow government that controls us from the background. So they created what I call a shadow constitution, and they put it in the hands of the military, and it's called the Law of War Manual. And so basically, if we have an acknowledgement and an understanding that our legitimate government has been taken over, that we, the people, are not electing our politicians, but they're controlled by the corporation, then we have the ability to leave our Constitution and go under the Law of War Manual, in which event, in this instance, one Donald J. Trump leaves the office of the president and becomes the commander in chief. And for those of you out there who truly are Christians, and if you follow prophecy, I want to bring a little story to light here. Kim Clement, who in my mind was the greatest modern day prophet that we've ever had, saw in 07, before Trump ever began to even think about announcing he was going to run for president, that he would be elected, that he would serve 2 terms. But here's what was important. He said there would be a period in between those 2 elections. That is exactly what happened here. God made that provision for Trump to move out of the office of the presidency, to get out from under the swamp where he could move under the law of war manual and do things that he could not do as president. And what he has done is he has had the opportunity to be the bull in the china shop that opened the eyes of the people of America by using the puppet Biden, so that the things that he did were so egregious that the people finally had to wake up and say, oh my God, what is going on? Who's running this country? So from the very beginning, God made a way. He is the waymaker for us. And this law of war manual is what is actually in place right now. And Trump is really in power, not as the president, but as the commander in chief. And let's go on and I'll show you exactly how that's possible. And it goes back to what you were saying a second ago, Francine, about something else that Trump did. When he left, he declared a national emergency. And I don't know the number, but he declared a national emergency. And like so many things, Trump said we have to do this legally. So it goes back to an event when we were coming out of the Great Depression and we were in World War II. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who, by the way, those who don't know, was one of the elite who had sold us out. He basically was allowed to have a third term because it was deemed to be too dangerous to bring in a new administration in the midst of a crisis. So when Trump left, we weren't in a kinetic war. Bombs weren't being dropped. But for those who have their eyes open, we're in a war that's even more dangerous. And Trump knew it. And so he declared a national emergency. And if you want to get a feeling for is Biden really a puppet, then you need to know this. That National Emergency Act had an expiration date on it. And Biden renewed it, not once, but twice. So if he was anything but a puppet, he would have taken that power away from Trump. He did not. And so basically, provision was made. God as a waymaker. Trump was allowed to stay in control, not as president, but as commander in chief. And he's in a position to do the four things that have to be done to bring this nation back. When he comes back, he'll give us back our natural resources, our manufacturing, and our trade, and we will get control of the money. And he will use that money for good, not to take over the spheres of influence to imprison us, but to take over the spheres of influence to free us. That's what's unfolding before our eyes, folks.
Mm.
So if we can advance one more, but you got any comments before we go any further?
Nope. Moving on.
Okay. So basically, that's where we got. I got two pictures, President Trump and Commander in Chief Trump. And before I'm going to read these, before leaving office, Trump placed the nation under a state of emergency, making him commander in chief. Biden is just a puppet stand-in. His job is to be such a buffoon that will wake up the people. Trump will be brought back without an election as soon as, listen to this, enough people wake up that we can do it without a civil war. So we've been watching a movie, and all it's been designed to do is to show the absurdity of what the shadow government is doing to us so that we can finally get our country back without creating the turmoil of a civil war. Let's go on, and now we're going to get into the real meat of this presentation, starting with this slide. So the waymaker, God, the waymaker. It says, if the elite can lose control of the monetary system, they're done. And that's what's happening right now. They're losing. And so it's not in this presentation, but you and I have done another presentation where we went through 34 different things, different ways in which the elite have controlled us. And what we called that was their playbook. And if we know what they've done to control us, you're going to see in another slide that it's so simple. They're done at that point. All we have to do is the opposite of what they've done to us. It always works the same way. Everything is on a continuous. It's black and white, it's yin and yang. So I'm going to give you the three things over here that spell the demise of them, because we do have their playbook. So the first is our enemy has used the same tactics over and over and over, and it makes him vulnerable. So let's take what I do. I'm not smarter than anybody else. I've just spent decades compiling information, but because they were stupid enough to use the same tactics over and over and over again, I've been able to identify those tipping points that are replicable and put the dots together, and I can expose what they've done in a way that most people can't. Well, you get a lot of people out there with great information, but it's on one little subject. What I'm able to do is to take everything and tie it together into a nice bow and show people this is the big picture. And that's what we've got to see to get our eyes open. So the second thing, our enemy has pushed us what? Too hard, too fast, too far. And it started with the '08 financial collapse, and it culminated in COVID, which is designed to lead us to the kill shot. So, but it's so much, too much right now. What they used to do is push us a little bit. When we began to woke up and push back, they would back off, and that went on for decades. And now it's full throttle, death ground, win or lose. All odds are, everything is on the table, but we're going to win and they're going to lose because they've overstepped and they're waking us up. And the last one is because the enemy is because of their mistakes, we're no longer divided. We're standing up and we're seeing we're all in the same pressure cooker. We all have to stand together and take this nation back and become what we were intended to be, one nation under God, united. And when we do that, we'll bring peace and prosperity to the world. So let's go to the next slide. So this is unraveling what they've done and going to lead us to the conclusion of how we win, how we take it back. Listen, look, we have four simple steps as to what you need to do to control a nation, and 5 simple steps for how you steal a nation. So let's run through them. This is going to lead us to the plan for how we defeat them. So step 1, use war to collapse nations to force the acceptance of a central bank, which is 90% of implementing communism. Step 2, create a fiat currency that's not backed by gold or silver or anything of intrinsic value, and use that to drive nations into unmanageable debt and put them in a debt trap. Step 3, bring in your people, embed them in the government, and create a shadow government so that that government is not representing we the people, but representing a financial elite of venture capitalists. Step 4, you use those people by embedding bureaucrats that are unelected into that shadow government and passing laws that do not represent anything that serves the people, but are designed to create a legal dictatorship. Step 5, take control of all of the 4-letter agencies, because you need control of the entire government. You need the judicial system, you need all of the politicians in the executive branch, and you need all of the agencies that are supposed to be representing our security. So they've taken over all of those. That's how, folks, our nation has been systematically stolen and taken away from us. And that's going to lead us into what we need to know to take this nation back again. You have any more comments before we go on?
Oh, here we go.
All right, here it is. This is, I don't know how many data points coming together to show you in one slide what the big picture is. Over on the left, from the top to the bottom, are the 4 things you have to know or have to have if a nation is going to be a global superpower. We've talked about them. You have to be able to control the natural resources, the manufacturing and trade. Why? Because that is the genesis of all wealth, and that wealth is used to buy power and influence. But let's go down. So also within that, they have to be able to steal your money whenever they want. So they have to be able to create boom bust cycles. And they do that in a mathematical formula that's so simple. They increase the money supply, they lower the interest rates, they give you an interesting investment opportunity so that you'll put your money in, and then as soon as enough of you are in there, they basically do something to trigger the collapse. And then they raise the interest rates, and finally they dry up the credit, and whatever it is collapses the economy. And that is the 2 things that they use to control us. And then if we go up to the beginning, before this has all happened, by using the control of the money, the manufacturing and the trade, that's where they get the money to take our 8 spheres of influence over. And that's where we are going to start to win, because when we get control of the money, we're going to do them exactly what they've done to us. And that bottom layer is just some pointers for you to think of as to what are some of the things that they've done that allow them to do these 3 heinous things. They control us with wars for profit, with fiat currency, with open borders, with drug addiction, with division, with rigged elections, with controlling our energy and all the natural resources of the world and all the things that are considered to be necessities. We're going to understand how we take all of those spheres of influence back. So
Amen.
let's move on, and we're going to go down now through 12 what I call foundation stones that are going to allow you to see how they've taken the power away. And then 16 things that say now we know enough that we can take our nation back. So real quickly, we've seen this slide before, but I always use them in different ways. So first of all, they took our republic away and they gave us a democracy, which our forefathers called mobocracy. And then the next thing they've done is what we're talking about today. They've given us open borders because a nation without a border has no nation to be sovereign over. And then they use the military in order to bankrupt us and to drive us into their global financial system by forcing us to take a central banking system. And then they have just assailed us. They've told us we're horrible, we're evil. They've taken away our family values. They've taken away our patriotism. And they've made us what? Instead of being proud of America, we're ashamed to say that we're Americans. We need to get our patriotism back. And then we came here. One of the principal reasons we came was because in Europe, peasants could not own land, and they've taken the land away. And I want to punctuate it. You think you own a home? No, sirree, Bobby, you do not own a home, because going back to that last slide, they can create a financial collapse anytime they want. You can lose your job in that financial collapse. And then because that's happened because they intentionally did that to you, let's say that you can't pay your personal property taxes for a year. The next thing you know, they've taken your home. So you are a renter. They are the owner. No American in this country actually owns anything, but that's going to change. Comments before we go to the next six?
No, it's absolutely true. I mean, everything that you said, I mean, they use the banks, the money that you put in the banks, they use your money. It's actually not them lending you, it's you lending them. I mean, it's such a racket, but praise God, God is revealing the truth so that we can walk in the freedom that he so wants us to.
Yep. So monetary system. So what do? They give us a fiat system as opposed to God's kingdom, which is based on commodities, which guess what? That's where BRICS is taking us. So the people who think that, oh, BRICS is evil, BRICS has got to happen to facilitate the financial collapse, complete and utter collapse. So how do they control us through their fiat system? They cause inflation and deflation, and they're able to basically trigger those collapses. And guess what? Today, our dollar is worth approximately 3 to 4 cents. That's why a car that when I was a kid, loaded with everything, was about $3,500, and now they're 40,000 or more because our dollar has no buying power anymore. So that's just a reality. And then they basically have taken over the resources. And what does Trump say? We're going to drill, drill, drill. And he says we're going to be energy independent and we're going to have our natural resources. So they've taken that power structure away from us because that's basically a very strategic engine for wealth building. And then they've taken our education system and it's just like in Hitler, they had the brown shirts and they were so brainwashed that those kids were turned in their parents. And our kids go to school and what do they learn? They learn to be ashamed of America. They learn that their mothers and fathers are nothing but conspiracy theorists and that, oh, communism and socialism is a good thing. We've got to take back our control of the education system. And then they've watered down our religion with the 501Cs. And then they've come in with the lying media so that we have absolutely no version of the truth that comes our way and we're controlled in every way, shape, and form. So that's just a wake-up call. Now we're going to change gears and we're going to say, how do we take the information we've learned in these last, I think it was 4 slides, and how are we going to get victory? So this is where we really need to pay attention. You notice one side's blue, the other side's red, and I think you kind of know what those stand for. So Francine, feel free to stop on any one of these bullet points and make a comment if you'd like. So this is how we get our nation back. Basically, they gave us a democracy, which is mobocracy. We had a republic. We take it back, and Donald Trump has given us the provision to do it with the second Declaration of Independence. So I don't care what they say. He's not planning on coming back as being a dictator. He's planning to come back and give us the original life, liberty, pursuit of happiness that we had under our original republic. And then globalism is what has basically created the breaks in the supply chain that allow them to control the necessities of life. So what's happening with the fall of China? Everything is a continuum, yin and yang. We're going to deglobalization, which does what? It takes away much of their power to control us. So if goods are made in multiple different locations and we're not depending on, say, just Taiwan for our computer chips, their ability to control us is substantially reduced. And so then we got fiat currency. And if we go away from that manipulative system we talked about a minute ago, and we go to God's economic system based upon all manner of commodities, not just gold, not just silver, but wheat and barley and steel and every commodity, everything that God made, which is the wealth of the world. God is the original banker. Before I go on, Francine, you have any other questions or comments you want to add to this list as we go through?
Nope, not yet. Thank you, though.
All right. So then they place us under an oppressive tax system. And why is that? Because remember, the corporation is in control, and the corporation is not there to give us inalienable rights. It is controlled by a group of venture capitalists, and the only obligation that they have under that corporate charter is to maximize the profits from the corporation. And so the first thing they do is put in the Fed and begin to tax our labor. So basically, their only objective is to tax us into submission. And so we have to move to the opposite end of the spectrum where we have what we had when we were founded, a simple sales tax, and that is enumerated in NASARA. So basically, I hope you can see it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. You just say, what did they do to control us? What's the opposite? So here's what I do to come up with the stuff that I come up with in these presentations. I sit down in a chair and I close my mind and I let myself float, and I see all the different data elements that are associated with whatever they're doing to us. And I bring them together in my mind and I see chains of thought, and I say, now I've got the information. Now, God, show me. I want to become the enemy. I want to be an Elijah in the enemy's camp. And I want to see what they're doing over breakfast in the morning when they're trying to decide how are they going to control us. And I want to see what they're going to do. And I want to know what we do to oppose them and to get our freedom. So this is just that process over years and years that's coming to show you how we get our freedom back. And so I think we're on the next one, which is free trade. And that is where they basically enslave us by making products cheaper than anybody else and driving them into nations. So what did Trump do when he came in? He got us out from under the intentionally losing NAFTA trade deal and gave us fair trade, where instead of losing money, we began to prosper, and we went from 10,000 on the stock market to 30,000. And then another way they control that free trade system is by making products that are designed to be obsolescent, which gives them an excuse to do what? To enter in and inject, oh, we have a shortage of natural resources and we have to go green. Well, the answer to that is very simple, folks. If we stop squandering our resources, we won't have that problem. So if we can make products that'll last a lifetime instead of having to buy them over every 2 or 3 years, look what that does. Their whole narrative of the green movement gone, gone. And then we got open borders, and we talked about that before. So we closed the borders, and it's so simple. I'm going to make it very, very simple. Stop funding them. Stop empowering them. Don't give them a driver's license. Don't let them go to the emergency room. Don't let them go to our schools. And then it'll not only stop coming, they'll leave. But there's other things we can do. It's more to it than that, but that's just to make it simple. And then they've censored us. And what have they done? They've taken over everything that basically is a megaphone. And think of this. I'm a computer programmer now. and I'm programming a computer, and it's garbage in, garbage out. So if the media lies to us, the politicians lied to us, the bankers lied to us, if every source of information that we have is based upon a lie, upon a truth, a half-truth, and a distorted truth, then how are we to figure out what's going on? So they've taken over the entire system, and literally, whether we realize it or not, the decisions that we make are based on flawed information. It's garbage in, garbage out. And the government owns our property. So we talked about that. They've given themselves take rights. We're going to get that back by basically nullifying property tax. They're not going to be able to take your home away by saying you didn't pay your tax anymore. We are going to become owners of property, just like when this nation was founded. We were under an odial ownership, which is a form of ownership of Spanish land grants. Who once you paid for our property, the government had no ability to ever take it back from you. And then gun control, and I hate to say this, folks, but all these terrorist acts that we see that allow them to push the narrative for gun control, those are controlled by the global elite. They're staged. They're done. They're designed to make us be willing to give up control of our guns, and then a little religious suppression. So we have to come back in and understand something that's very hard to understand. Our churches have been usurped, and we're going to have to make some very significant changes in the churches. And we're going to find that a lot of pastors are going to have to step down and a lot of congregations. And here's what we're also going to have to do. We've been fragmented into denomination after denomination after denomination. We're going to have to get back to the core of what is it that God wanted to teach us. And that takes us to my third book. And it's so simple. Take all the dogma out, and all that's left is Christ is the Son of God. He came here to be a model for us. And if we just try to replicate our life and what we do around the virtues that he demonstrated, the world will stand and shine like you cannot possibly believe. And then control the necessities of life. Trump says he's going to give them back to us. There's going to be patents that are going to be released. We're going to get a new medical system. We're going to get free energy. We're going to get all of the blessings that God has stored up for us. It's not just money, it's the kingdom of God that is going to be released unto us. And then the wars, it is said of the American economic system as the only system in the world that equalized and elevated the condition of all mankind. Well, when people aren't in lack, when they're not struggling and striving and saying, I need to take this from that person so I can survive, the principal reason for war goes away. We're going to have peace on earth. And the division that they've created artificially is going to go away because God created America to be a melting pot to unite. And when we find out what they've been done and how we be intentionally divided, this nation is going to come back together and be united again and lead the world in a period of restoration that's unheard of. So if I can get my computer to agree, let's go on to the next slide. That one was very significant. Do you have any comments? Now, that's 16 things. There are more, folks, but I tried to pick out the most important ones. I didn't want to bore you to death. I could have probably come up with 30, but that should give you an idea. There's a single formula. Look what they've done. Ask yourself, what's the opposite? Everything is a continuum. It's a yin and yang. To understand how we get our freedom back, all we have to understand is how it was taken away. It does not take a rocket scientist. It's not complex. It's simple common sense.
Yeah,
If you got comments, I'd like you to make them here because that was a pretty significant slide. I hope I
really.
drove the point home.
Yes, you did. Absolutely. And you know what grieves me is the fact that the leftists and even those on the right, I mean, it's one party if you really look at it.
Yep.
And honestly, if you look at the whole thing with war and peace and what they've done to the men and women in our military, that they've sacrificed their lives for money in their pocket and for their use, and that, I mean, that ought to move somebody to do something right there, because how many have died for the sake of money, and their wants and their needs, to satisfy them. So yeah, I mean, this is a great great slide. And if we would just step up and be a voice. I know that there's some out there that say, hey, I really don't get out much. What am I going to do? Well, you could pass this message on, and you never know who you pass that on to. It might motivate them, or they may have the influence to do
Ooh,
something. So,
you just made me think of something I need to say to your audience. I've got that second book coming out. It's Liberty Crusade, Restored Republic. I'm putting the final touches on the last chapter. God had me putting 3 new chapters in. It's going out Monday to be edited. And it'll probably take 6 or 8 weeks and it'll be out. God says, park it until the financial collapse occurs. So here I am, this little guy. I got this small platform. But if there's any podcasters out there listening, especially if you've got a big platform, I want to make an appeal to you. If you believe that what I'm saying has merit and that the people need to hear this message, here's what I believe God is going to do. And if you can step forward and help, that'd be greatly appreciated. I just got on His Glory. I believe that's going to open doors to some other bigger platforms. But if there's anybody out there with a big platform listening, here's what I need to have happen. I need to create a Rolodex in the next 2 or 3 months of a dozen or more really big people with big platforms. So, because here's what God has said. I brought you out at the very end. I promised you that you would not go out until we were on the very edge, on the brink of collapse, and then you would come out like an atomic bomb. So he said, got that book parked until the financial collapse comes. And look at the name, Restored Republic. So that book will come out on the tail of all of those whistleblowers and tell us in detail why America is the only nation that can restore peace and prosperity to the world and exactly how we do it. So if there's anybody out there that has a platform, I please ask you to get in contact with me so that I can get your contact information so that when this book comes out on one day, I can make a dozen phone calls and get to 10 million people. And those people can get to others. And we can bring this message to the people because we need an army and I need an audience that's big enough that we can have influence over what happens when this collapse occurs. So that may seem a little vested interest. I'm not interested in the money. I'm interested in saving this nation. So if there's anybody out there and if you're in agreement with what I've been saying, go to my website, get in touch with me, and let's share contact information. So let's move on. So we're going to touch, we did whole presentations on what the American economic system is, but in a nutshell, if you go back to that last slide, a lot of the components of it are in that slide on the red side. So the American economic system, it was said of it as this: 2 systems that are for the world. One is the English system. The other will be may be proud to call the American system of economics, the only one ever devised, the tendency of which was that of equalizing and elevating the condition of all mankind throughout the world. So what we've done is gone from an oppressive system on the left to a system that gave us freedom on the right. And that is a lot of what is in the American economic system. So in a nutshell, we're going to get back to the control of our natural resources. We're going to get back control of our taxing system so that they can't control us. We're going to get back control of all the things that take us out of slavery and put us into freedom, and all the illegal forms of taxation that they hold us in slavery with: the federal income tax, the property tax, the credit card tax that's based on compound interest. All that's going to go away, and we're going to take the money, confiscate it from the people who have been enslaving us, and we're going to use it for good. So let's move on. So here, I want to punctuate this. If you get that second book when it comes out, I don't get any credit. No man gets credit. Basically, it's God. God has the plan. And I want to show you that when you see what is in that American economic system, it's not a flawed plan made by some man. It is simply what God always does. It's a foreshadow of a system that worked, that had absolute proof that it did what it was supposed to do, and we're just going to re-implement it. So basically, I want to tell the story of the rise of America real quickly. It came around the time of the Civil War. It came on our 100th-year anniversary, and what America had done was said, we're now going to become an industrial powerhouse, and we put a 50% tariff on England. And what that did is it forced us to manufacture, to become a manufacturing powerhouse. It forced us to get access to our natural resources. It forced us to have our own trade agreements, fair trade agreements. So all of those bases that we saw for what makes a nation great came, and basically in just 34 years, America, the youngest nation in the world, based on the American economic system, which did not hoard but shared and allowed all nations to share in the prosperity, became the richest nation in the world. So it was said of it that the America, the youngest nation in the world, in 34 short years, supplanted England with a 300-year head start and became the richest nation in the world. Folks, buckle your seatbelts up. That's what's going to happen, except even a bigger, larger, and grander fashion than had happened before. So now we're going to tie things together and show you they had 5 ways that they control us. I'm going to show you 3 simple ways in which we get it back. So let's go to the next slide. And all 3 of these have to happen. It's very simple. When Trump comes back, he knows what he's got to do to restore the economy. We've talked about it to ad nauseum. He's going to give us, he's going to drill. He's going to close the borders. So he's going to give us control of our natural resources, our manufacturing, our trade, our money, and our borders. And bam, we're going to not have an army of people fighting against us in the swamp. And so what he did before, which was raise our stock market from 10,000 to 30,000, he'll do to raise the standard of living for the entire world. That's the easy part. The next part is where we, the people, have to become participants in turning the world around. We have to take back those 7 spheres of influence. We have to go back in and reestablish our family values, our religious values. We have to get back our education system. We have to take control of the media. We have to get back the entertainment industry, and we have to get back to the political industry, the economic, and our military. Those are the 8 spheres of influence, and God's going to give us the way to do it, because he's going to transfer the wealth from the wicked to the righteous. So in another slide, it might even be the next one, we're going to show you just exactly how simple that is to do. And we're going to do it by doing it exactly the way the enemy did it. But the third piece is also critical. This is God's nation. So he wants us to be wealthy, but he wants us to be his stewards. So we have to create a governmental system that's going to, again, share wealth and prosperity with the world. And we can't do it if we're not a religious, moral government of people who are here to do what? To equalize the condition of all mankind, and in order to have a government that is of the people, by the people, for the people. So we have to restore our patriotism, our Christian and our family values, and make them instrumental into who we are. Or in other words, we have to go back to our root. So we destroy the enemy by cutting them out at the root, which is their control of money, and we plant our seed in the ground to make us the giant tree that takes over the entire world, that can never be destroyed, by creating a nation that shares peace and prosperity with the whole world. This is the plan we have to follow when we get back the reins of power, folks, and it's not complicated. It's simple. This was another, as simple as it looked, another important slide. Do you want to make any comments on that before we go to this next one?
No.
All right, here it is in a nutshell. They give us the answers. I'm going to go to the left first. So basically what happens, this is how they take that money and how they control us. So basically they have an army at the bottom that is well funded by the Soroses and the Bill Gates and the whatever, and they have all kinds of this nefarious programs that they control in order to control us. That's called community organizing groups, from the bottom up, pushing projects that are not designed to help us, but designed to systematically collapse the nation. And then in the middle, they magnify that voice with their bought and paid for media that gives us nothing but lies, making what those community organizers are doing have a voice. And then those bought and paid for politicians at the top at some point stand in and say, we heard you folks. We know that the people of America want same-sex marriage, and we're going to give it to you. So I'm going to read this quote. This goes way, way, way back to 1971, but it shows you exactly what they've done. And we can do the same thing. We can take over the spheres of influence. So it says, now the Council on Foreign Relations, I want to punctuate. I've had slides up on this before. The Council on Foreign Relations, before I read that slide, is committed to ending the sovereignty of all nations and ending all borders in order to create a one world global government and to usher in the 10-nation trading bloc that creates the beast system. So every politician of any power and magnitude in this country, as we've shown you in other slides, belongs to that organization and are therefore traitors. So here's what the Council on Foreign Relations laid out at Davos, or one of their strategy meetings, as to how they take the power from us. It says the Council on Foreign Relations is the establishment. Not only does it have influence and power in key decision-making positions, and then I added at the highest levels of government to apply pressure from above, but it also uses individuals and groups to bring pressure from below to justify the high-level decisions for converting the U.S. from a sovereign constitutional republic into a servile member state of a one-world dictatorship. This is what they've done to us. We get control of those spheres of influence. We fund the community organizing groups in order to prosper America and the world. We take over the news outlets in order to give the truth, and we reestablish in people's minds what the American economic system was, what a republic is, and then we get in fair and honest, duly elected representatives at the top, and all of a sudden we have a government that is free of the shadow government and is there to serve we the people. And this is how you've done it. This is what I've been trying to lay out for you today. And then I want to make it even sound simpler. India got their freedom by rallying around one man, Gandhi. And all he had to say was, if you refuse to participate in your own slavery, you will break the control that England has on you, and they'll let you go. And so then I want to go back to another quote from the 1920s. Joseph Stamp was the head of the Central Bank of England. And he said, folks, if you want to continue to be the slaves of the banking system, then allow them to continue to print money. But if you want to be free, then you have to break away from them the ability to print money, because as long as they have it, no matter what you do, is they'll recreate that money and they'll take back. So that's why this has to be a total, complete, absolute financial collapse. China must fall, America must fall, the global financial system must go into absolute bankruptcy. Nations must fall, corporations must fall, the stock market must fall, and we must have the transfer of wealth to us, and then we take over the spheres of influence. So we do it by doing what Gandhi did. And let's go to the next slide, and this is your second assignment. And for those who are listening to people say, Trump is going to be a dictator, can you go to the next slide? This absolutely just repudiates that completely. Down at the bottom is a link where you can go to get a 9-page document that is the Second Declaration of Independence. And what it basically says is that we are declaring not our freedom from Europe, from England, but our freedom from the corporation, from the Act of 1871. And it tells you all of the things that have been done to us in order to bring us to the point that we had to do what our Declaration of Independence granted us in the first place. If we see that a tyrannical government threatens our life, our liberty, and our pursuit of happiness, we have the right to institute a new government that in our minds will give us those rights back. That is what this document is. I urge you to go out on the internet, print it off, and read it. It will blow your mind. So go back and watch the movie Monumental. Go back and watch the movie that Francine talked about. Um,
Mr. Smith.
somebody goes to Washington, Mitchell Smith goes to Washington, and go back and get this second Declaration of Independence, and you will be empowered. And let's go to the next slide. And the outcome of all of that is peace, harmony, and unity and goodwill to man. And then the very last one, folks, I hate to sound like a salesman, but you need to buy this book, because as much as I give these presentations, it's not like you sitting down and reading this material, because it's in much more detail than I can give on these. We need an army of people. So the last assignment is, please buy this book, read it, and share it with others. So when this crisis comes, which is coming quick, you're going to be empowered to join the army of God. And then when that second book comes out, don't skip the first one, because you need foundation in order to get ready to join the army. It's just like boot camp. You don't send a soldier out to fight a war until you first put him through boot camp. So with that, Francis, we have concluded. You got any closing comments?
Well, as always, I thank you so much for being on the broadcast, and I do urge people to do their due diligence and research. Go and complete the assignments that Larry has given us all, and you will feel empowered. You will know in your spirit what you need to do next. God's going to guide you in your journey here, because this has all been a journey for us. And I just praise God that the Lord has brought you to the forefront at this time, Larry, to bring forth the truth. And of course, always keep your eyes focused on Him, your ears attentive to the Father as He guides you, because we can give you information, but the Lord, that He, through the Holy Spirit, will guide you in the steps that you need to take. So, Larry, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you as always, Francine. I appreciate it.
All right. Well,
And say
until
hi to your husband. Tell him I missed him.
I sure will. I sure will. Kind of gave him a honey to do list, and it's taken a little bit too long. So
Uh-oh.
I know, right? But it's okay. No laughing out there. Anyway, God bless you all. Thank you for joining us on Upfront in the Prophetic. We're so blessed that you came to sit and listen to such wisdom. So God bless you. God bless you, Larry.
Bless you. Thank you.
You're welcome.